Because if you have immediately at hand a weapon that can kill a lot of people in a short period of time, what then happens is that an impulse, a hateful impulse, is turned into a murderous assault.
Welcome to the Go Use Australia podcast. It's the podcast for Australian shooters who just want the political interference taken out of shooting.
And welcome to another episode of Gun News Australia, brought to you by Politics Reloaded and Gun Traders Australia. And I have with me Ralph Folie from Conservation Australia over in WA. How are you doing, Ralph?
Hi, Neil. I'm doing well, thank you.
And you are also the president of the West Australian Shooting Association.
That's true. That's correct.
Yeah, which is the membership includes, I think, a lot of the key state shooting organisations. They include the West Australian Small Bore Rifle Association, West Australian Pistol Association, International Practical Shooting Confederation, Shooters Union WA, West Australia Field and Game Association, Conservation Australia, as we said, and Veteran Firearm Owners Club. It's quite a gathering.
Yes, yeah, good bunch of people and many disciplines.
Yeah, and I know you guys were very active, certainly in the lead up to the WA state election, which, didn't produce the result that I think shooters were hoping for. But I think, and I keep saying that when you peel away the headline results, you still saw, I know the impact that the gun laws had on West Australian shooters still resulted in a pretty big swing against the Labor government. It was just that it was a massive hurdle to overcome to actually kick him out.
Yeah, that's quite true. There were some big swings, but just not quite big enough because they just had so much in the bank.
Yeah.
But on that, yeah, we pretty much exhausted our bank account with donations to potential candidates. Well, two candidates, people they thought were going to win in marginal seats.
This is a very long-term game, so do not think for a minute that it's over in terms of the effect of the donations, because in politics, politicians have a very long memory, friends and foe. Now, in fact, in a recent podcast, I actually argued that politics is not just about elections; it's actually what happens between elections as well. And so, again, this is a long-term game. Now, the West Australian shooters will be aware that there was a motion put to West Australian Parliament to disallow the regulations that are in place now, and also to review the new Firearms Act. So, for good reason too, because I think there's not many shooters in WA who aren't aware of what has landed on their doorstep. But your association pulled together a submission in support of the disallowance motion, and I've got it here with me. You actually pulled together a lot of annexes from basically each of the members, explaining what the effect of the new laws has on them. And there's a history behind that. Can you tell us what the history is?
Sure. So with my WASA person, I was asked or requested a meeting with Dr. Brian Walker of the Legalised Cannabis Party, who was indicated that he was going to move the disallowance motion. So we went there. We had quite a lengthy chat. In fact, I took some other delegates there to the Parliament House, and Brian shared us lunch, and it was very nice. And we talked business, of course, and he said, look, could you put something together for me? So that's why I went home and contacted all the delegates and asked them for their submissions, the points relative to their disciplines. And that was those 7 or so annexes that they put together for me. And then I did a broad cover page listing some generic stuff.
Okay. Now with the motion, you also had a conversation with I would imagine one of the least likely Friends of Shooters over in WA from the Greens Party. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So, look, Brad Pettit, Dr. Brad Pettit, lives in my suburb. I have a committee member that lives in my suburb as well, and Brad and my committee member, Jerome or Jez, are within a couple of doors of each other. They frequent the same cafe, and Jez has had a chat with Brad about what the work we do, Conservation Australia, as far as targeting feral animals. And Brad said, "Well, that's interesting." And then Jez, of course, spoke about the gun, the legislation, and ended up that Brad said, "Look, I support the fact that you guys are targeting feral animals because that takes some of the pressure off the native animals, the native fauna." I got an email a couple of days ago. It was only a brief line from our committee, our club got an email from Brad Petty. He said, "Give me a call, please. I want to talk about the gun issue." So that led to me ringing him today. We had quite a lengthy chat about the whole business, and he indicated that he was going to support the motion that Nick Goiran was raising today. So that's how that went.
Okay. I'm still a bit stunned by the fact the Greens sided with Shooters because I don't think over in the eastern states we would ever see that. I don't know. But it's a very pragmatic approach.
Well, let me be clear, because Brad said it's something to the effect it's Greens policy that we don't support something I forget how he put it now, like firearms broadly. He certainly wouldn't support everyone go out and get a firearm, but he understands the need of the use of firearms to manage feral animals. So I think it's important to understand that.
Yeah. No, that's great to hear. You mentioned Nick Goiran, and he has been obviously a frequent flyer in terms of the debate over the firearm laws in WA, as has Shane Love, leader of the Nationals. Now, today, Nick Goiran announced that some good news, that despite the fact that this had been a similar motion had been dismissed in the lower house, where Labor has a clear majority, it's actually got up in the upper house, even though Labor holds a majority there. And I'll run through the numbers shortly, but let me run through the announcement that came from Nick's office, which is here. Now, what we're looking at is a generic email that went out, and what it says, and bear in mind that this is also an audio podcast, so I'm actually going to be reading parts of it. He talks about the motion that he gave notice of to have the Firearms Act referred to a standing committee on legislation for a full public inquiry. Okay, so they're going to open up a lot of can of worms in this. It remains to be seen just how big this is, and that the new laws will be subject to the full scrutiny of upper house debate as normal practice. Now, what he then talks about is the guillotining of debate by the Cook Labor government, and then he talks about the fact that the motion that was put forward has passed. And he specifically calls out, obviously, his own party colleagues, but the National Party, the Animal Justice Party, who, again, are on exactly the same page as the Greens when it comes to, I guess, firearms, but clearly they get the point that you made, which is this is actually about feral pests and things like that. So there's the Animal Justice Party, there's the Australian Christians, the Greens, the Legalised Cannabis Party, and One Nation. Now, that's a total of 21 seats in the upper house out of 37. So it's 21 against 16, 16 being Labor. So even though Labor holds, not so much an absolute majority, they had the greatest number in the upper house. Yeah, the numbers worked. And look, you've got to give credit to every one of those minor party people, and Brian Walker and, Brad Pettit, etc., who actually helped pull this together. That's a phenomenal result.
It's fantastic, and this is the first I've heard of the figures. Haven't seen the figures, so yeah, look, really good. I look, I find Nick is a very, very honest person, and I think he sees the Labor Party as being quite grubby in the way that they treated the rollout of the Firearms Act. They cut off debate, and because they've cut off debate, that's why we're seeing such a schmozzle, because people weren't, it didn't go through the normal process. And I know Nick was filthy about that. And I suspect many of these other people that have voted for the motion are dirty on that as well. And they also understand that we need to control feral animals. They are, the figure of cats and the amount of native fauna that they take per day and foxes, I can't rattle them off. Maybe you can, but it's extraordinary.
The advice from Nick also states towards the end that he expects that the standing committee that will be formed will be calling for public submissions shortly, which he'll obviously spam out, and we'll certainly do our best to pass it on. So, I think this is a great day for West Australian shooters. We're certainly not out of the woods yet, but if anything, the cooperative approach reflects that this wasn't just bad legislation; it was vindictive. It was appalling. You saw the fact that the government would not extend the consultation period for shooters when this went out in, I think, late 23. In the ramming through of what were just terrible laws. So this is a great day. I think everybody's pretty happy about it.
I think it's fantastic. A fantastic day. It's been people have been chewing their fingernails. Have been terrified. Look, people have been losing their firearms under this regulations and act already, but they can't even get on the portal to get a property letter from the farmer. So they're swept up in this. The portal's not working for the farmers. The farmers are right in the middle of seeding. They haven't got time to go down and nut out the portal for a couple of hours to get on. And of course, the firearms owner can't get his letter, and then the cops, are onto him.
There are just so many tentacles to this. You said the property letters. There was also the safes issue, the portal, which you mentioned, the club templates that are causing clubs to show down. You've got the mental and physical health checks and the doctor's issue. It just goes on and on and on. And
I found out today from a local cafe, the young fella there has been an air rifle shooter for 35 years. He's won as a junior, won a state championship. And the police boys club, what's the correct term? Police and Youth Boys Club, which he's been as a member there 35 years, they have shut down air rifle shooting. And there's something like 6 police and boys youth clubs, whatever the correct name of the association is, in WA. They've all been shut down because of this. So we can't have any we're not going to have any juniors coming through into shooting. We're not going to have anyone in the Olympics if this runs its course.
On average, about half of the shooting squad that represents Australia in the Olympics started off as minors. Sometimes 10 or 11, 12 years old. But I remember looking at it a few years ago, and it varies, it changes over time. But it's usually about half. So you're right. It would actually that kind of movie does nothing for shooting. I'm just going to quick.
The whole thing does nothing for public safety either. So that's a big smoke and mirrors thing. From the 50 cal stunt to all the nonsense that's come out from Mr. Papalia, who thankfully is gone.
Yeah. I'm just going to quickly go back to the numbers in the upper house, just so that people fully understand that these are the numbers of MPs in the upper house. So you can see here the highest number is Labor, 16 members. So basically, the Liberal Party has been able to rope in, I think, everyone else, all those ones and twos, and obviously their own side and the Nationals, to roll Labor on this.
Oh, I think they've all been working together. I would imagine the phone's been running pretty hot. Certainly, One Nation in there. The legalised cannabis. It's been of course, the Greens. Everyone's been working together.
Yeah.
But they know that this is just stupid, terrible.
And you compare that to the lower house, and you can see here you got 46 Labor and you got 13 combined for Liberal National Party. That's why this problem, and that's as I said, that's actually after the election where I think Labor had 53 seats.
Well, Labor had complete control of both houses before the election.
All right. Well,
it's a different story now. And look, I'd take my hat off to Shane Love, who's really fought hard on this in the lower house. He wasn't going to win that.
No, but he stuck his neck out big time, as did Nick and a few others.
He did.
Yeah. So show your support for shooting with our mouse pads, which feature pistol, rifle and shotgun shooting, and they come in two sizes. There's a regular size, which is 205 by 145, and the new large size, which is 230 by 190mm. And they can be yours for $20 for the regular size or $25 for the large, or $7 and $12 if you're a supporter of Politics Reloaded. So to get yours, just drop us a line with the size you want and the delivery address to editor@politicsreloaded.com or use the QR code on the screen.
But I'll tell you, I don't know if you know, but we're the only state that has this property letter system. We said to the police that it was a failure and they would not listen, and they've continued down the path. And we still have this ridiculous fucking system where you buy a firearm and then you seek the license. They would not look at this permit to acquire.
Even though there is signatory to the National Firearms Agreement, which specifically requires that. WA also does not have mutual recognition of interstate licenses.
And that's all come out in that. If you read the fellas from the pistol guys and that submission that travel interstate, they talk about those issues. You can't loan your wife you can't swap a pistol at the range now, and all the ROs and all this.
You've also
Every junior now has to have their own safety officer, or whatever they're calling it.
Which doesn't work when you're on a range at a proper competition. You're supposed to have one RO, one range officer, in control of the whole event, so that everybody gets the same instruction at the same time. You've also got
just so many issues in it. And look, I've got to say, and you might want to say, the clubs and all clubs have run their ranges fantastically. We don't have, casualties at rifle ranges. Yet the cops have had to get in there and mess with it all.
They have brought in their own templates, and I would suggest that there are organisations around that have far more expertise, international expertise, in shooting matters than the WA police have. I'm at a loss to understand why, for example, with the air rifle, the small bore, the full bore, international disciplines, why WA police think that they've got more expertise than falls under the ISSF banner. Up to the Olympics. If it's good enough for the Olympics, not good enough for WA police. That's how they think. So hopefully,
it's look, the bottom. They'll tell you it's about public safety. It's not. That's nonsense. It's about reducing the amount of firearms in the community, and they've gone about with devious. They're going about with devious means.
Why aren't they a bit more honest and saying actually they're pulling out of the NFA because they don't comply with half of it anyway? They want their serviceability certificates when you buy a firearm.
You buy a brand new firearm, they want a serviceability certificate.
Yeah.
Well, it's like going to your car, go and getting an engineer to look over your new car. I mean, really?
Public safety, apparently.
They didn't listen to anything in the Professor Zimmerman report, 205 or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, the list goes on and on and on.
This is a much bigger can of worms than I think anybody can even possibly fathom at the moment. So,
you wait till we get in and talk about the 50 cal stunt on an untemplated range for a 50 cal. And I think I sent you all that stuff. I got somebody handed me the Freedom of Information, and all the dodgy stuff for the media stunt. It just stinks, really.
Which we covered and eventually got some good airtime too. It took a while, but it did got some airtime. So. Okay, Ralph Folie from the West Australian Shooting Association, thank you very much for your time. It's been most illuminating.
Thank you very much, Neil. I appreciate you asking me some very good questions.
Good man. Thank you. I'll see you later.
All right, see you now. Cheers now. Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Gun News Australia. And if you're a supporter through Patreon, you'll get access to early release of the episodes as soon as they're uploaded. And you'll also get access to our Friday night live streams. So to support our work, simply go to patreon.com/politicsreloaded or use the QR code on the screen, or see the description in this episode for details.